Last season, I predicted all 82 games for the Utah Hockey Club in their first season in Salt Lake City. I had them finish the season with 87 points, and just missing the playoffs, they finished with 89 points. I was pretty happy with those predictions, so we're going to try it again, starting right now. A couple key things to remember as you look at the schedule for Utah this season, just new additions that'll be different from last year. This year they have a 6-game road trip, a 5-game road trip. Last year the longest road trip they had was a 4-game road trip. They had 5 of them. This year there's only 3, but now they have a 5-game and a 6-game road trip. So they have these really long road trips this season, and that'll create a new challenge for this franchise as they operate out of the Delta Center here in Salt Lake City. In my crystal ball, I see October as being a slow start, unfortunately. I think that there is some scheduling things that we'll talk about which explain that. Perhaps most peculiar, you'll see the overtime loss to the San Jose Sharks. But the Sharks are going to have a full day's rest advantage going into that game. And last year, the Sharks were able to pick up a win in the Delta Center early in the season. So will be an interesting thing to see if that happens again. But the schedule's kind of shaping up in that way because of the rest advantage that the Sharks will have. Then the other big part is at the end of the month, they have a 4-game road trip that starts with the St. Louis Blues. And getting that game against St. Louis is going to be crucial for 2 reasons. One, St. Louis is a team Utah will need to pass up in order to make the playoffs this year, and that's their goal. And secondly, the last 3 games of that road trip, Minnesota's going to have a 3-day rest advantage in that game. Winnipeg then is on the back-to-back, having played Minnesota the night before, and Edmonton will be the 3rd game in 4 nights, another scenario which usually sees teams drop points in the standings. This scheduling makes it likely that the first game against the Blues is the crucial one. Otherwise, they may have a road trip that starts and finishes without getting a point. That's something that's never happened before. They avoided that last season. They always got at least a point on every single road trip last season. Life gets a little bit better for Utah Mammoth fans in November as I see them taking away 17 points in the 15 games in November. The team will come home for just a single game following that 4-game road trip that we just talked about against Tampa Bay. And then they go out on another 4-game road trip. This time they're going out east. That game has 2 back-to-back games in it. The first will be against the Toronto Maple Leafs, the second one against the Ottawa Senators. And here I have them getting a loser point against the Senators, and getting that loser point will be huge. All of this will finish in 8 games out of 9 being on the road, with 3 away back-to-back games and a 3rd game in 4 nights on the schedule. It's just a brutal scheduling sequence for the Utah Mammoth near the beginning of the year. Later in the month, they have a road back-to-back against San Jose. So again, these kind of unlucky scheduling things, they line up with San Jose. You'll see it one more time later. So I see that as a schedule loss on there, and that stinks because it comes against the Sharks. I'd love to have those back-to-backs be against Dallas or Vegas, right? But this one's against the Sharks. It's a scenario which it's really tough to go in and get wins in. So that's where we have that. And then if you look at the second game against Montreal, the one at home, that's the last game before Thanksgiving. I have Utah with 26 points through 24 games at that point. Thanksgiving is usually a good barometer of where the playoffs are going to land. And if you are just over 500, you're going to be right on the fringe. So I think all indications indicate that this season, this team is going to be kind of in a similar scenario as they were last year. They're going to be having huge games down the stretch, and we'll have to see where they are. But we'll know a lot by Thanksgiving this year, American Thanksgiving. So then they finish the month off by kicking off that monster 6-game road trip against Dallas before a huge road game again against the Blues. But that one against the Blues this time on the road is the back end of a back-to-back, having played Dallas the night before. So 17 points in November. December sees them go out and score 13 points across the 14 games that they'll play during the month. You'll see the San Jose game again. That marks a third game in 4 nights, and they finish the 6-game road trip with a double whammy. That's a back-to-back game. That is also the third game in 4 nights. That game against Calgary, that is almost certainly a scheduling loss with it being a back-to-back and the third game in 4 nights. Plus, they're finishing their 6-game road trip. Like, brutal, brutal, brutal. So that's where that'll be. Last season's longest losing streak for the Utah Hockey Club was a 5-game losing streak. I have this stretch seeing the Mammoth losing 8 games in a row. That's really not great at all. It'll feel terrible at the time, but you'll see that as the season goes on, it gets a little bit better. They finally break that losing streak against Seattle at home. The last game of the road trip that you'll see there against the Detroit Red Wings is one of those double whammy games. It's a third game in 4 nights. It's a back-to-back, so that's a really tough spot. So again, that's why we've got that registered the way we do on there. And then the month ends with a game where Utah has the greatest rest advantage of the season. It'll be against the Nashville Predators, and Utah enters that contest with 4 days rest advantage over the Nashville Predators. And then Happy New Year. We're into January, where we see 17 points coming up for the Utah Mammoth. The Mammoth have their longest homestand. They have 7 straight games at home, and Utah really needs to clean up during this stretch. In January, I have them ripping off 7 straight games in a row as victories. And that best last season, the longest win streak the Utah Hockey Club were able to put together last year was a 4-game win streak. Here I have them winning 7 straight. The Florida road trip is in the month of January, and it comes near the end of the month. That Florida road trip did not go very well last year. Utah lost both games in the Sunshine State. I see a similar fate this time, just really good teams. It's just a hard road trip. 2 time zone travel and back-to-back. So that's terrible. Then they have the task, though, at the end of that, of swinging into North Carolina to take on the Hurricanes. The Carolina Hurricanes will have the largest rest advantage of the season that any of the opponents will have over the Utah Mammoth in a game. In that scenario, while Utah finishes their 4-game road trip with a 3rd game in 4 nights, coming off of playing the defending champs and Tampa, their 3rd game in 4 nights is against Carolina, who's also awesome. They're going to be really good. And they're going to have the largest rest advantage that any team will have over Utah this year. That's definitely feels like a loss. February. Hey, look at this. 4 games, 4 wins, 2 games at the beginning of the month. Then the Olympics in Milan, Italy take place. We'll see how many of the Mammoth make the national team for their countries. It'll be interesting to see. Will Keller make Team USA? Will Cooley make Team USA? Will any of the Canadian players make a jump? Maybe Dylan Gunther is just lighting it up and scoring so many goals it's impossible to leave him off. Veggie likely to represent his country, so it'll be interesting to see. At the very least, there'll be a couple Mammoth that play in the Olympics. And then they finish the month welcoming the Avalanche in their first game back from the Olympics, and I like that because, Makar and McKinnon and all of the top players for Colorado are likely to be coming off the Olympics. Brings us into March, maybe the best month from a points percentage, playing not better than February, but in terms of raw total points, best month I see for them all season. 18 points in 15 games. Utah has a 5-game road trip at the beginning of the month of March. Again, second longest road trip of the season, and longer than any of the road trips last season. But I see them going pretty well on that road trip. I feel like, it'll be crunch time, a little bit more focus and intention going to those games. Other teams may be out of it or feeling like, they're on their last legs. So I see them doing pretty well, grabbing 6 of 10 points on that. Mammoth will then have a road and then home back-to-back after playing in Vegas. And then they'll take on Anaheim at home. That Anaheim game at home is going to be a really fun game. I have Utah gutting out a win. And Anaheim, I think, is taking another step forward this year. I think that they improved their coach. and at least have a little clarity. I think they lost the Trevor Zegras trade, but that was needing to happen anyway. But the biggest thing is that the Anaheim-Utah game there, that should be a really great game. Couple fights maybe in that one. And then in the last month of the year, 9 points in 8 games. And it's a tough challenge near the end of the season with Carolina at home, followed up by Calgary on the road in a back-to-back. Utah may be directly competing with Calgary at that point, and the Flames and Utah having a back-to-back game for a playoff spot right at the end of the year. That's just an unfortunate scheduling scenario that late in the season in the playoff hunt. Then you get Winnipeg in a third game in 4 nights in the second to last game of the year. And in the last game of the year, for the second season in a row, Utah will finish the year with the St. Louis Blues. And another game that could loom very, very large in the final standings and who's in and who's out in the playoffs. All in all, I have Utah getting to 91 points. That's a 2-point gain over what they accomplished last season. Will that be enough to make the playoffs? It wasn't last season, but in other years, it's been enough points to get in. Strangely, if 91 points is going to be enough to make the playoffs, then they're going to need to see the bottom feeders like St. Louis and Chicago close the gap and get a little bit closer. Draw some more of those points away from the guys at the top and squeeze in the pack a little bit. That makes 91 a playoff spot total potentially. But now you're counting on and hoping that you get in the playoffs because San Jose and Chicago are better. And that's not a great spot to be in. If they're at 91 points, they made another tiny step forward. They missed the playoffs. I think it leads to a lot of tough questions to answer for Bill Armstrong about how he's going to make his next steps in the rebuild. Any games I got totally wrong? Anything that you're seeing in there that makes you feel funny or that you agree with, resonate with? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, give us a like. Consider subscribing to us. We do live streams following every single game of the season. So we hope you'll come and check us out there. My name's Keith. I'm here with Hive State Hockey, and we'll see you real soon.